the ramifications in the West we make a great deal of. You have a much more sober view. We're dealing with hostages. And you would say that the cultural and political confrontation that we're looking at here in the West is a distraction.
It's a sideshow, Manus. I mean, it's not unimportant for those who are protesting. We are seeing that there are political costs that some politicians, Suella Braverman, the latest,
yes,
are paying. But in the greater scheme of things, the real story for me remains what's happening in Gaza and in Israel, where people are dying, and there's a prospect of many, many more people dying, and very little prospect of actual. We still, more than a month in, we still don't have a clear idea of how this ends. Israel has not yet properly communicated how it sees this thing ending. And of course, there's that whole business of the hostages, yes, who remain unaccounted for. We've been hearing officials from Israel, Qatar, and the United States say for weeks now that they are trying to get the hostages out. But beyond saying that, we've not seen very much happen on the ground. I understand it's complicated. There's a war on, and Hamas is famously an unreliable negotiator. But the families of the hostages, for them, this tragedy just continues.
Well, Bobby, there was also an Arab League meeting over the weekend. Is there any clear consensus from the Arab world in how to move forward?
No, and I think a lot of people in the Arab world would have been very disappointed with that. There was a gathering, there was a sort of bromide criticism of Israel, condemnation of the attacks on Gaza, but no clear direction on what needs to happen next. There's no clear demand for what the Arab leaders want to see. From the point of view of the world economy, and certainly from the point of view from the West, the biggest concern from that meeting would have been whether or not the oil-producing Arab states, the GCC states, were in a mood to impose some sort of an oil shock like they did in the 1970s, early 1970s. That did not happen. No. There's a division among oil producers on that subject. There are some oil producers which have liked to have seen some sort of a penalty being imposed on the West for supporting Israel, but there's no consensus as yet. However, if these images keep coming out of Gaza, that could change.
It's interesting that you touched on that. Khalid Al-Faleh with us at the New Economy Forum last week, being very, very clear with Stephanie Flanders that, you know, still the road to some kind of normalization was the objective. It's interesting, Emmanuel Macron told the BBC there's no justification for the bombing of Gaza and urged ceasefire. Germany's Olaf Scholz, of course, backing Israel's right to defend itself. So the splinters, the divisions in Europe are becoming ever more apparent. It's going to be a big week for Xi Biden. Do you think security will be solidly addressed at the Xi Biden summit, or what do you think the upside is in terms of the world for this meeting?
Well, the fact that they're meeting at all is very important. The two most important countries in the world, two biggest economies in the world. Just a few months ago, Xi Jinping was not taking Biden's calls. So the fact that the two of them are meeting is crucially important. Two of the most powerful militaries in the world have not been communicating with each other. That's a very, very unstable and dangerous situation. In a world where there are two live kinetic wars in Ukraine and in Israel, wars of enormous consequence for the rest of the world and for the global economy, it's not a good idea for the military leaders of the US and China not to be speaking. So if the only thing that comes out of this meeting is a commitment to resume those conversations, I would take that as a great move forward at this moment. I mean, there are important economic questions they need to address. Xi Jinping is coming to this meeting. For the first time in many years, a Chinese leader is coming to this meeting with a weaker hand, the state of his economy being as bad as it is. So Biden may not have the strongest hand himself. He's distracted by Ukraine, by the prospect of a re-election, and now with Israel. But Xi Jinping's hand is considerably weaker than it has been for many, many, many years.
Well, what does that actually mean in practice for Xi to enter this having a weaker hand?
Well, he's counting on just the meeting itself. The fact that he's in San Francisco and he's being the center of attention, he's counting on that itself to give him a little bit of a boost back home. Remember, you guys have covered it extensively. The state of China's economy is very soft despite the recent quarter reports. There's a structural softness there. The real estate market is still in extremely parlous state. And the crucial thing is, of course, unemployment, youth unemployment, 20% when we last found out. And it's a very, very telling fact that China stopped reporting that number. When a government stopped reporting a number as important as that, it's got something to hide. And so this is, Biden will be fully aware of this going into these discussions with Xi Jinping. But, that's where the weakness comes from. And how much Biden wants to press on this, given his own concerns, we shall see.
Right. Yeah. And we're just talking to Guy Johnson about China maybe ending the freeze on Boeing orders. So the issue of trade and China relations with U.S. companies is alive and well. Bobby, thank you so much for joining us on this Monday morning. That is Bobby Ghosh.